Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of League Chat with the Stat. Finally done with round 3 and all the insane talking points from there we're going to get straight into. Now, I've got to say, just before we get into all that, crazy weekend with an insane amount of injuries to a lot of big players. It's going to be an unreal podcast to get into, guys. A lot to uncover, so let's get right into it. Kicking off with the NRL ladder. Battle of the West, the Panthers and the Eagles remaining undefeated at the top of the table. You've got from 3rd down to 9th with Roosters, Titans, Dragons, Raiders, Rabbitohs, Knights and Warriors. 2 wins and 1 loss. The team with 1 win and 2 losses. You got the Broncos, who got their first win of the season, the Storm, the Sharks, and as well the Tigers, who also notched their first win. And at the bottom, languishing without a win and 3 losses, the Cowboys, the Bulldogs, and the Sea Eagles. Guys, thank you for joining me on another great episode of League Chat with the Stat. Talking all things round 3, and I've got to say that it was quite the round where a lot of things that happened were very unexpected, especially when it came to injuries and a lot of empty benches. But we're going to get into it right now. Starting off with the Panthers 12 defeating the Storm 10. And, mate, what a grand final rematch. Even though that Pappenhausen was missing and Nathan Cleary and Apisai Coruscant, it was just quite the game. Now, still very entertaining game of football. Went right through to the death. I thought, Matt Burton really showed his class in that whole game. Got named man of the match, and obviously pretty understandable as to why. You can see why the Bulldogs want him so desperately, because they have no attack, and he just seems to bring that calmness and that experience into the side, even though he doesn't have much first-grade experience. He's handled every opportunity that he's had, he's handled it with a lot of class. Now, with the Panthers, I thought, they were really lucky to get away with it. You got to see Kurt Capewell try with a minute and a half to go. It was just lousy defense, and obviously not something that obviously Bellamy would be happy with, but you got to give credit to the Panthers. They dug in and hugged deep, especially with the fact that they were missing half of their spine. Now, with the Storm, I've got to say that they did miss Pappenhausen, and they did struggle a little bit. I thought Cam Munster was just exceptional, just took on a lot of runs, made a lot of meters, 20 hit-ups and 195 meters. He did a lot of running and did a lot of defending as well. Controlled that side really well. But look, you got to take a hat off to the Panthers for hanging in there, and that last play where Olam just should have passed the ball. Unlucky, very, very, very unlucky for them to not have passed the ball to Adakar, who was open on the wing. And look, obviously Bellamy would have been blown up about that, but you got to give credit to the Panthers, especially in how they defended in that set. Not sure if a lot of you saw the vision, but Kikau fell over on the other set, got impeded in the field of play, and what looked like was going to be absolute certain try. Kikau made his way to the other side of the field as the whole Panthers team scrambled, and he got his arm underneath just when Olam was about to score. Just little efforts like that I thought really stood out for me. And I even thought Spencer Leniu as well, his involvement in that tackle as well, really just goes to show that the Panthers are really, really hanging in there and trying to make the most of every single opportunity they can. And just trying to, I think just remaining undefeated as well. I think that's the biggest thing for them, and not conceding many points. Only having conceded 10 points in the first 3 rounds is very impressive. But look, as I said, Spencer Leniu was huge for them. 14 runs, 113 meters, and 3 tackle breaks. For the Storm, I thought Christian Welch was their best player. 15 runs, 133 meters with an offload and 25 tackles. And by the best player, I mean in the forward pack. I think the best player on the field for the Storm was Cam Munster. And as I said, Matt Burton, as I said, he's just... I can see why, as I said, Trent Barrett would really want him. But no matter if we get him this year or next year, if Bulldogs have no forward pack, we're going to do nothing. We'll get into that a little bit later. The Dragons 38 defeating the Sea Eagles 12. And I just had to sit here and marvel at Zach Lomax. Watching him last year tear up in the centres, I thought it was huge. I thought it was fantastic, especially how he played, and very unlucky to see him miss out on an Origin jersey. But he's not really harming himself this year. That catch, to get the first try scored for the Dragons was fantastic. Leapt up in the air, grabbed the ball, scored. Phenomenal. He's kicked about 20 to 25 goals straight at the moment, trying to chase Haslam's record of 35 or 36. But he's been very good since Lomax obviously been moved to the centres. At fullback, it was his kind of vision to be there for the next 4 or 5 years when he had re-signed. But obviously with Dufty picking up his game and taking that to another level, that's really helped Lomax solidify himself in the centres. And you can see why he's so good. He's creative. He can chuck a good offload. He can set his men up in Ravalawa really well. And they've got a great combination building on that side. I thought, they were really good. Matt Dufty, one of the best supporting fullbacks in the game by far. I think just the way he presents himself at every opportunity. Is big for the Dragons, especially when there's any half chances. He's always there to like a Gutherson role, where he's always there to get that ball and make the break if he has to. So Duffy's taken his game on another level since mid last year, and as I said, he's been playing really well for him as well. So it's good to see those two guys lift. Really sad for Ben Hunt, but you got to give credit to him, man. Ben Hunt last 2 games has been exceptional. Played the rest of the game with a broken leg. But he didn't even actually really notice as well, which was pretty impressive. He'll be out for the next 4 to 6 weeks. But moving over to the Sea Eagles, they're just struggling. And the thing that they're struggling with the most is that rhythm. And they don't seem to be able to get that rhythm because a lot of sloppy errors were made. You look at Sean Kippy made an error, which was dumb. Croker made an error out of dummy half, which wasn't great. Cherry Evans did have a better game. But look, again, Dylan Walker just proved once again why he isn't a good fullback, and with Des sticking around with him as fullback, it's gonna until Jabojevic comes back, not this week, next week, it's gonna be a very painful night for the Sea Eagles coming up on Thursday night. But they're just struggling as a whole. A lot of injuries. They've got Josh Shooter playing in the second row with Curtis Sirinen out, and I think that with their strike players out and their depth being tested a lot at times. They are just struggling to get that rhythm and to find that form. And I think Kieran Foran has been below his best as well. And it's good to see he's been playing a good few games consecutively. But the Seagulls need a lift. And they need to dig deep and work hard and figure out how to get out of this rut because it's not looking good for Des as coach and it's definitely not looking good for Manly fans out there as well. But I thought, moving to the Dragons, Paul Vaughan was very good. 17 runs, 166 metres with 78 post-contact metres, 2 tackle breaks and 20 tackles. When you look at that, and you see the impact he's been having. This is the form that we saw with Paul Vaughan that earned him a State of Origin jersey, but he needs to keep that up. And look, the Dragons have had a decent, good couple of weeks, but Paul Vaughan needs to be leading from the front week in, week out, and producing numbers like that will only help his case. Moving over to one of the greatest rivalries in our game, the Rabbitohs 26 defeating the Roosters 14. Now, that first 40 minutes from the Rabbitohs was just amazing, clinical. This is a team that we've been waiting to see, for the first 3 weeks. We saw them come across against Melbourne, and we thought, man, I don't know how they're going to go with Melbourne. We saw them when they took on the Sea Eagles, and they showed glimpses of their best, but this was the game where they really solidified themselves as genuine premiership contenders. And just the way they've combined, with Cody Walker and Latrell down that left-hand side with that try, beautiful to watch. I love short side plays. All of you know that. Moving over to the short side and making something out of nothing, especially with that Chor with that little flick pass that he probably learnt from Benji. But just their combinations, their instincts, it's very, very good. Now, with the Roosters, they were shocked. But they should have expected this. Last year, they lost 60-8 in the final round before the finals. And, the Rabbitohs were just rolling, in that game. Now, moving over to this game, they've kept up that momentum. So that first 40 really laid the platform for them to just kind of hold on for the win against the Roosters. But the Roosters are going to be very... How do I put this? They're going to be in one of their most trying periods in their most recent memory. They've lost Luke Keary, unfortunately, to an ACL injury. I wish you all the best. Lachlan Lamb to an MCL injury. Lindsay Collins got concussed as well. And, he rolled his ankle in the process. And this is on top of already not having Jake Friend, Sam Verrills, Victor Radley, who was a late withdrawal from the game, Boyd Cordner, and Billy Smith. So their depth is really tested at the moment. And they just had no answers for a Rabbitoh side who just came out the blocks and really dominated in field position and just with possession in the ball as well. They just made, with every opportunity they had, they made the most of it. And Mark Nichols off the bench, I think, was huge for them. 16 runs, 157 metres with 2 tackle breaks on offload and 15 tackles. I think his input off the bench in the most recent years has been really good and has been, what the Rabbitohs have been looking for their men off the bench. Kind of like a Jason Clark role where he'd come on to make a pretty solid impact. Mark Nichols has taken that role under his belt and has really dominated for them as well. Moving on to the next game, Warriors 34 defeating the Raiders 31. Now, if Raiders have a full bench, they win this game. There's no doubt in my mind. They were far ahead of 31 points to 6. And look, yeah, a lot of their players had to play injured. But look, losing players in the first half, they lost 3 within 10 minutes. They lost Joseph Tarpanay, who busted his ankle, moving into the defensive line. Then in one tackle, they lost Sebastian Chris and Ryan James, who were both heavily concussed and both didn't return for the game as well. And, seeing performances like, from Josh Papali, who punched out 65 minutes, which he hasn't done in a very long time, especially with the game getting as fast as it is. Curtis Scott played the second half with a broken rib, and because he couldn't come off. And I thought performances like that and having like that, just that, how can I say, I think just with them gelling together and trying to hold on, I think was what really got them over the line, or tried to get them over the line, and had them dominated in the first few moments, like 50, 55 minutes of that game. But you look at the Warriors, the first 20 to 25 minutes of that half, maybe even the first 30, they didn't seem like they were going to do anything special. Raiders got out to a 24 points to 6 lead, and they really came out the block second half as well, and they kept that up. But as I said, because of the fatigue that got into the Raiders players, the Warriors just dominated off that. Now, we obviously got to talk about it because it's been a massive controversy, that forward pass. What I don't understand is how Henry Perenara, who was standing right there, and the touch judge was also in line, missed a 6-meter forward pass. Could they not take into account the fact that Ben Murdoch-Masila almost tripped over his own legs, trying to catch that ball to reach over and lean with everything he's got to get that ball, run the rest of the midfield and score? I don't understand if they're there and they can call it. They've called forward passes that haven't been forward passes, and the one blatant forward pass that they call, they don't call it. And it costed the Raiders at the end. But look, I've got to say this. I've said this for a while, and I'll continue to say that Roger Tuivasa-Sheck is one of, if not the best defensive fullback in the comp. It is amazing what that guy does at fullback. You only got to look at, Ash Taylor in the first half. And what happened there was Ash Taylor was certain to score in round 1 in the first half of that game against the Warriors. And the way Tuivasa-Sheck held him up was impeccable, was flawless. Now, with that being said, we've got to talk about the try saver at the death. Because the Raiders had that opportunity. George Williams threw that cutout ball for Jordan Rapana. And as he dived, Tuivasa-Sheck had run from that almost middle of the field as he's tracking the play to bump his hand as he was putting the ball down. You don't get better finishes than that to a game, and you don't get better try savers than that in the game as well. And it just solidified my point of how good he is defensively. And look, Warriors are going to miss him next year when he goes to rugby union. But just at the moment, with the way RTS has been playing, especially for the last couple of years, he's been their main man for the Warriors. And just that play, for me, summed up what he means to that club and what the club means to him. Josh Papali, as I said, punched out big numbers, him and Ryan Sutton. Papali'i first, 20 runs, 209 meters, 95 post contact with a tackle break and offload and 31 tackles. Ryan Sutton, a little similar, 23 runs, 200 meters, 91 post contact meters, a line break, 2 tackle breaks, and 51 tackles. Really standing out for the Raiders big men in the nation's capital. And you got Adam Fanua-Blake, who again has just been exceptional since joining the Warriors. 15 runs, 175 meters with 85 post contact meters, with a try, a line break, 3 tackle breaks, and 21 tackles. Moving over to the next game, the Broncos 24 defeated the Bulldogs 0. Honestly, do you know when you play park footy and you're playing under sixes and then you get the coaches run out with you and then you set up the cones on either side and then you put, you shorten the field? Kevin Walters and Trent Barrett should have been running out behind the players and just entertaining them and just trying to make fun of them, because I can honestly sit here and say that game was under sixes level. That was so poor. That first half, finishing 2-0, the errors, my goodness. If we had a relegation system, I would automatically relegate the Bulldogs and the Broncos just after that performance. They were both shocking. The Broncos obviously got away with it in the second half, but yeah, they held us to 24-0, but let's be serious. It's not that hard to hold the Bulldogs to 0 when we offer nothing in attack. Now, with the Broncos, their next month of rugby league is the top 4 from last year. They have a big, big month coming up, and they get a few players back as well, which is going to help them, which we'll get into a bit later, but it's not that hard to play that well against the Bulldogs. Again, the Bulldogs, so many one-on-one misses, so many stupid errors, and we're so lost in attack that no one knows where to be, in what position, no one knows what to do, no one knows how to handle the pressure of being in attack, because everyone, they're a young side, but at the same time, this is NRL. You are the pick to be the best in that club, and to not produce 1 point against the Broncos, just one, Also, just want to say as well, if we're going to consider all things, that this is the second game in a row the Bulldogs have been held to 0. First time in the club's history. We've been held to 0. Last week we lost 28-0 to the Panthers. And this week, we lost 24-0 to the Broncos. We've got Rabbitohs coming up this week. We're not going to score another point at the way we're going. If we couldn't score a point against the Broncos, do you think we're going to score against the Panthers or the Rabbitohs? Absolutely no chance. They were embarrassing, and I sat there as I watched that game in pure anger because I didn't know how else to feel about the game. It's going to be another long year for the Bulldogs. I actually thought 9th to 12th was actually a reasonable place for them, but they will be definitely the bottom 4 with how they've been going. TPJ was good for the Broncos though. 16 runs, 152 meters, a line break, 3 tackle breaks, 3 offloads, and 31 tackles. And Carrigan, bouncing back from that game last week against the Titans, 15 runs, 164 meters, 4 tackle breaks, an offload, and 37 tackles. And there was no one good for the Bulldogs. It was pretty clear. We got left on 0 once again. And it's only going to get tougher with a few more plays missing for them this week as well. The Eels 28 defeating the Sharks 4 in the Johnny Manor Cup, retained by the Eels. Now, must be a good feeling to be a Parra fan. 3 from 3 in their first 3 games. And they're riding pretty high on confidence at the moment as well. You can just see in their body language and how they've been performing and how they turn up for each other, especially in defense. It's been good signs at the Eels, but how many times have we seen this from the Eels where they start to fade out or they'll dominate in the season and then they become contenders in the season and pretenders in the finals. So it could be another case of that, but at the moment they're 3 from 3, tied top of the table with the Panthers, and they're riding pretty high at the moment. Now the Sharks were in that game, but again, losing Britton Nakora, losing Wade Graham, losing Sione Katoa, obviously it has an impact on your side when you're down and you're that fatigued. Similar to the Raiders. One of the men that stood out for me was for the Sharks was Aaron Woods. 16 runs, 146 meters, 73 post contact with a tackle break, 2 offloads, and 48 tackles, and a big effort from Aaron Woods. For the Eagles, their whole forward pack dominated. From 8 through the hooker, through 10, straight through the second rows and the lock, they all dominated and put up big minutes and put up big numbers to obviously dominate the Sharks, who obviously lost a lot of players during that time when everyone had gone off and been injured and concussed. So, look, the Eels get away with that one, 28 points to 4, and just sets up a good clash against the Tigers next week for the Eels. The Tigers, speaking of them, defeating the Knights 24 points to 20 over at Newcastle. And I don't understand how Newcastle lost his game. I see him mind blown at how they lost that game. Yeah, they lost Bradman Best, which was a huge loss for them during the week. He was to be out for 6 to 8 weeks with that elbow injury. But what the Tigers did, which was smart, and finally they started to use a bit of their brain, was they exposed the Knights' weakness down that left-hand side, where Dominic Young, who was making his debut coming over from Huddersfield Giants, thrown into jersey 32 because jersey 20 couldn't fit him. So playing jersey 32, Dominic Young comes in, and they know straight away it's his debut, and that the only way they'll score tries is through him. And he looked so lost out there, the poor kid. Defensively, he showed nothing. In attack, it didn't show much. Made quite a few errors, and really put the Knights in so many positions where they shouldn't have had to be in. And they let so many tries in, especially down his side of the wing, because they knew he was on debut and they knew he was just a kid coming through, and they knew that if they're going to target anyone, they'll target him. And I thought Luke Brooks played a very good game. I've been hounding him for the last couple of weeks and even a bit last year as well, but it was good to see Brooks put in a better kicking game and a better performance, especially with his boot as well. With that kick to set up, the way he for that trial was actually a pinpoint accurate kick, and it was good to see Brooks get a bit more confidence out of that game. But as I said, the Knights, with the forward pack that they have, they should really be the top 4. Unfortunately, their back line is very weak. You got Ponga, who's their main man at fullback, but then the rest don't seem to be really. Bradman Best is still young in his career, but he's a freak. Gehamat Shibasaki, not really proven. Homo Hunt, not really proven. Stafford Toa, not really proven. And Aro Tawala, not really proven. So there's a lot of backs in that Knights lineup where there's a lot of inexperience. So with that inexperience, the forwards have been laying the platform for the Knights. Some of their forwards hit at 200 meters or just below. But it's the Knights' backs that are the biggest weakness. And until the Knights get better signings in the backs, which then will be the time there will be a genuine premiership threat, especially with the forward pack that they have. It's a massive forward pack. You know, you got Stefano Toikamani for the Tigers, who finally had a solid game, especially after 3 games, finding his rhythm. 8 runs, 109 meters, a try, a line break, 2 tackle breaks, and 24 tackles in 25 to 30 minutes of playing. I thought it was pretty impressive. That try he scored, beautiful. A great try. Simple ball from Brooks straight to him. Hit that line up and stepped through Hoy and got through, which was really good to see. But I thought both fullbacks for both sides were really good. I thought Tex Hoy finally played a game where he puts a lot of clubs on notice if he wants to be a starting fullback. I thought he played pretty well. I thought that Dane Laurie, since he's come to the club, who I thought would take a lot of time to adjust, has fitted in so well. And he will be my early contender for Rookie of the Year by far, just with the way he's been playing and just how he's held up so far. Moving over to the last game of the round, Titans 44 defeating the Cowboys 8. And very good performance from the Titans. All around, great performance. You know, all their players played very well. Their backline lit up from Brimson scoring a double to Thompson to Philip Sammy playing really well as well in the centers. Their halves, you know, Tanner Boyd jumping in for Ash Taylor. I thought he was very solid as well. And then that forward pack just dominated, especially Fodawaker. His stats I'll get into in a moment. But the Cowboys are very soft. Josh McGuire came out and said that they don't have that willingness to win. They don't have the willingness to work hard, to grind. And you're seeing that in their performances. You know, they've been smashed the last 3 games. And there's no signs of improvement coming up. Not that I can talk about the Bulldogs because they're probably the softest team in the competition. But with the Cowboys and the players they have, you know, that you look at Valentine Holmes and you've got Scott Drinkwater. And you've got that a lot of creative plays in them as well. Isan Masters, who didn't have a great game on Sunday night and has been dropped for the upcoming round. It's those players that need to lift. Jordan McLean needs to lift. You know, he's on big money over there, so he needs to step up as well. Colin Hess, been very, very average, and they are missing Taumalolo at lock, even though they have reduced his minutes. But there's no fire in their bellies to want to succeed. There's no fire to want to strive to be better. And with performances like that, we're going to be expecting a lot more of these from the Cowboys if they don't start to find their rhythm and start to get out of this rift. Welcome to my Supercoach segment now. Moving over to that. And I finished very poorly, 1,016. Now, having Cleary missing, having Pappenhausen missing was already tough for my side. Didn't think it was worth trading out Nathan Cleary to anyone because he was going to be playing this week anyway. Having Sebastian Chris becoming my auto emergency in scoring 10, with him getting KO'd, as well as Ryan James, didn't help my cause either. And with head-to-head starting and having already lost a few of my rounds through my leagues and head-to-head, it's time that we start getting some players back, start making some solid trades. Jaden Bradley has been solid, scoring 80-odd every week, so he's one I'm really considering. But look, we got to step it up, and we got to look to get back on top. You know, 1,016 is not great, especially 3-4 rounds in. So I'm expecting a big improvement, and I'm expecting anywhere between 1,100 to 1,200 this week. So with Cleary and Pappy back, we can make that all work. News around the NRL world, guys. A bit to get through here. Andrew Fed has been linked to the Dragons as a decent mid-year replacement to bolster their forward stocks. Only problem with that is he's on massive coin for like 8 to 850,000 a year. So to fork out that kind of money or to even chip in half is going to be quite tough, especially with the Sharks kind of holding their position to keep him for now. Reece Walsh has requested an immediate release to go from Brisbane to the Warriors to be under the tutelage of Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. Bronco said that they'll only do that if they can get a play in return. Warriors offered them Hayes Perham, and they said no, so they're still in negotiations with that. Broncos have tabled a 4-year extension to Katoni Staggs and have also given him a shot at the number 6 jersey. What I'm hearing is that Anthony Milford may not be re-signed by the Broncos, with the Cowboys being linked to him. Now, Nathan Brown has rejected a $1.2 million 2-year extension with the Eagles, while Manly have lost interest in signing him. As I said last week, Manly want to keep their focus on just bolstering up their forward pack. Now, the West Tigers were keen to sign Jackson Hastings to use him as a ball-playing lock, kind of like a similar to Connor Watson. Hastings himself has come out and denied all that, so I'd be looking to see how and when, if they were to get Hastings, how they'll be able to get him and what will convince him to make the move back to Australia. Martin Tapau has been told that his services are no longer required, and he can start shopping himself around to other clubs. 31 on $800,000 a year, and the Seagulls really need to shed that money to buy some more players, especially in the front row. But they have been also linked to Jaden Sewer, with him coming off contract at the Rabbitohs this year. You know, the Titans have also come in with an offer for Katoni Staggs. for $750,000 a year for 4 years, with also a shot at the number 6 jersey as well. Trent Barrett came out in the press conference after that loss against the Broncos and made it clear that Brendan Biakura will be staying at the Broncos. News to Kevin Walters' ears because he hasn't really heard anything from that. So again, bit of news. Once we thought, he was coming to the Bulldogs and now he's looking to stay at the Broncos. It's kind of all up in the air at the moment. The Broncos and the Titans, as of tonight, have been told they're going to be relocated to Sydney for a few weeks due to the growing COVID cluster in Brisbane. The Bulldogs, these imbeciles, this week tried to do another swap again, involving the same swap that Penrith offered us in the off-season, giving us Matt Burton if they took Dylan Napa. Trent Barrett, the genius, decided to think, no, Napa, will be someone that will add value to the team, and he's been woeful. And so the Bulldogs thought, why don't we try the deal again just to see if he'll be on? And Penrith after them and immediately rejected that deal. And you can't blame them. Matt Burton, a quality player, to Dylan Napa, who's a dud. Of course they wouldn't make that trade. No club would make that trade. The Tigers are chasing Brent Naden to bolster their back stock. The stocks in the back, considering that Joe Leilua has the club option to re-sign him for next year, but on $700,000 a year, and doesn't look like he'll be re-signed. Obviously, Manafungai has been added to the top 30 for the Bulldogs, and will be there to the end of the season. And they have also released Tyrone Harding to pursue opportunities elsewhere. Dan Gagai was offered to Parramatta so that they could so the Rabbitohs will be able to keep Adam Reynolds in the side. Now, Adam Reynolds, as I said, a bit of a contract stouch at the moment. The Cowboys management have flown down to Sydney to meet with his manager, and they're looking to offer him a 3-year deal, which is going to be what he's looking for. Rabbitohs, as I said, aren't moving past the 1-year deal, which I think they're lunatics. And for someone like Reynolds, I think they should be offering him 2 years max. You don't have to offer him 4 or 5 years like you did with Burgess and Inglis. I'm sure that the Rabbitohs can offer him 2 years at least, kind of get that stability in there, and then, kind of go from there and see how that goes. And last but not least, NRL introduced the 18th man. So what we require is that if 3 players get knocked out or due to HIA and get injured, due to not being able to return from HIA, the 18th man can jump on and be that an additional substitute into that game. From what I'm hearing, it could be a member of the development squad or a member of the top 30 coming through. So don't know really how I feel about this. Having a kid who hasn't really been experienced or hasn't really been prepping himself to be playing first grade can just get chucked in at any time. There's a lot of risks involved in that, but that'll be introduced from round 5. Now, questions from you guys that have been sent through. One from Adam saying, how good is Para? Yeah, they're traveling pretty well, 3 from 3 at the moment. But as I said, they need to be competing week in, week out. And what they need to be doing is showing those bigger teams and even getting some wins over those bigger teams to prove how serious they are being premiership contenders. Jacob from Advisory Corp Accountants, talk to us about the Dogs. Mate, not much to say. They're woeful, and it's going to be another long year for them. Joseph, what do you think caused a lot of injuries this round? I just think there's a lot of how can I put it? Just a lot of accidents. None of these injuries no player goes out there to go injure someone. So a lot of these injuries, like Luke Keary's one was a big accident. Sony Katoa's, Lachlan Lamb, they're all accidents. Nothing to do with the speed of the game. I just think it's just very unlucky. And to have had 20, 25 plus injuries was nothing like I've ever seen. Shah Bell's coming through, the big Roosters fan, saying unlucky for the Roosters with their halves situation. Who are their halves going to be? It'll be Drew Hutchinson and Sam Walker, which we're going to get to just after this segment. Brendan, who's pulled through, asking who I'll be tipping, which I'll also mention that next segment. Ruben, from the Dragons fans, which team should get relegated and why should it be the Bulldogs? Pretty funny considering that Dragons have won 2 games against pretty lackluster teams. But look, I don't blame him for riding high, but let's not get too excited. And Colin from New Zealand, favourite grand final, I have to say 2004 grand final between Bulldogs and the Roosters. Being down 13-6 at half time, coming back to win 16-13. One of the best grand finals I'll ever see, and probably the best grand final side of all time. Now, moving over to round 4, talking points and who's in and who's out. Okay, Seagulls versus the Panthers on Thursday night. For the Seagulls, Morgan Ball has been added to the bench. It will take the spot of Toa Fafawa Sipley. For the Panthers, Dylan Edwards has broken his hand, which means Stephen Crichton will move to fullback and Matt Burton will go into the centres. And Nathan Cleary returns at halfback and no other changes to their sides. I'm going to go Panthers here by 14. I'd say more, but I think Seagulls show a little bit more fight. especially when they're playing at Brookie. So I'll go Panthers by 14. The Bulldogs will be taking on the Rabbitohs in the Good Friday clash. Jeremy Marshall-King is out for the next 8 to 10 weeks with a broken foot, replaced by Sione Katoa. Again, Sione Katoa. Nick Meaney has been moved to fullback in a straight swap with Corey Allen, who will go over to the wing. And Lachlan Lewis gets a recall at 5'8" at the expense of Jake Averillo. I'm against it because it's Lachlan Lewis, but I'm not against it because Averillo hasn't really been performing. Josh Jackson has been suspended for a crusher tackle, so Renouf Atoni will move to starting lock, and Jackson Topinen will make his debut off the bench in jersey 14, and Dean Britt will also join the bench as well. So a lot of changes there for the Bulldogs. The Rabbitohs sticking solid 1 to 17. Doesn't really, for those that are tippies out there, go tip the Rabbitohs. Just want to remind you though that the last time Dogs versus Rabbitohs, Dogs hung in there and won by the skin of their teeth. So you choose. The Storm attack coming up against the Broncos. For the Storm, Ryan Papenhuyzen has been named to make his return from that neck injury, pushing Nico Hines back to the reserves. For the Broncos, Payne Haas is playing his first game of the season, returning from that suspension. Matt Lodge returns from injury, as well as John Asiata. And they will be replacing Reece Kennedy, Tom Dearden, and Ethan Bollimore on the bench. This game, with Storm back-to-back losses, they're going to be wanting to come back to Amy Park, and they're going to be wanting to put on a big show there. So I'm going to go Broncos. I'm going to go Storm there by 18. Sharks coming up against the Cowboys. Sione Katoa has been replaced by Moreni Hiroti, with Sione Katoa being out with an knee injury for the next 4 to 6 weeks. Bryden Okoro is suspended for 2 games, so Teague Wilton will start in the second row, and Braden Trindle will join the bench. For the Cowboys, a few changes here made by Todd Payton. Jake Clifford and Issa Masters have been dropped. Issa Masters will be replaced by Corneli Lemuelu. That'll push O'Neill from the centers, from the wing to the centers, and then pushing Hamiso Tabuai-Futo from the centers to the wing. And Jake Clifford will be replaced by Ben Hampton, who gets a jumper number 7 for this week. Ben Condon, Shane Wright, and Josh Maguire will join the starting side, with Ruben Cotter and Mitch Dunn injured, and with Colin Hess being benched. Now, with the many changes being made and a few additional injuries to both sides, I'm going to go the Sharks here by 18 points. And I believe they will bounce back, especially from the game they had last week. Titans will be coming up against the Raiders. Titans are 1 to 17 for this clash for the Raiders. Dunamis Louis and Hudson Young are back into the side, pushing Ryan Sutton into lock to replace Joseph Tarpanay, who succumbed to that ankle injury. Sebastian Chris will be moving over to the centers and taking the spot of Curtis Scott. This is going to be probably one of the games of the round. Going to stick solid here with the Titans, but it'll be Titans by 4. Titans there by 4. But that's if they're playing Queensland. But looking like they've moved over to Sydney, I might have to go with Raiders. Maybe Raiders by 6. The Knights will be coming up against the Dragons. Gehamat Shibasaki will move into the centres, with Stafford Toa onto the wing and Dominic Young dropped to the reserves. And Blake Green will make his return from an ACL injury and take the spot of Brodie Jones, who moves to the reserves. For the Dragons, Adam Clune will take the spot of Ben Hunt, who is out for 46 weeks with that broken leg. And Brady Williami will take the spot of Jack Bird, who's suspended for 1 game for that stomping. Now, the Knights will need to bounce back, and I think this will be a good test for the Dragons, but missing Ben Hunt will actually be pivotal, considering how well he's played the last 2 games. So, Knights to bounce back by 16 points. The Roosters take on the Warriors. Now, a lot of changes here for the Roosters. Victor Radley will finally make his return after being a late scratching last week. So he'll start off at lock, pushing Isaac Liu to prop to replace Lindsay Collins, who's injured his ankle. Luke Keary, as we mentioned, out for the year, as well as Lachlan Lam out for 4 to 6 weeks, both replaced by Drew Hutchinson and debutant Sam Walker. A lot of hype around this kid, so excited to see how he goes. With Matt Ikuvalu and Nat Butcher will be joining the bench. For the Warriors, Peter Hooker has come to a PCL injury, ruling him out for 3 to 6 weeks, with Marcelo Montoya taking the spot in the centres and making his club debut. Bailey Sirinen, who started from the bench last week, will start in the front. Will start in the second row with Tohu Harris coming in at lock and Jazz Defaga moving over to the bench. I'm going to pull a shocker here and go Warriors by 4. I might have to bite my words and probably bite my tongue and probably regret what I'm going to say there, but I just think the Warriors, they've been playing with a lot of heart recently, and we've got a better side now, so I think they'll be one to take the biscuits in that game. And on the Easter Monday clash, not Good Monday, sorry. Tigers will be coming up against the Eels. Tigers 1 to 17, and for the Eels, Ryan Madison will move to the starting side, shifting Isaiah Papali'i to the bench and Keegan Hipgrave over to the reserves. For this game, I'm going to go the Eels. I think they will be strong enough to defeat the Tigers and get one over them once again on Easter Monday. Guys, thank you for joining me once again. League Chat with the Stat. As you guys know, we're all over our podcasting streams, we're all over our social medias. You know where to go to follow them and share it around. And looking forward to round 4 and what it brings to all of us. Guys, thank you very much again for joining me this week. You have yourselves a good week. Enjoy the footy. Happy Easter. God bless. And we'll see you next week. Take care.